Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the start of chapter 7, ratios and proportions. We're going to be solving ratios and proportions today. That's going to be our objective, so we need to figure out what a ratio and a proportion is. Relatively something that you have seen before. I think this will be a relatively quick lesson. All right? So the very first thing I want you to do is write down these 3 points of a ratio. All right, so when you look at a ratio compares two numbers by division. There's 3 ways it can be written. It can be written with the word 2 in there. It can be written with a colon in there, or it can be written as a fraction. But you need to make sure b cannot equal 0. And the reason behind that is because it can be written as a fraction, we cannot divide by 0. Remember, that's an error. If you took 7 divided by 0 or any number divided by 0, that's an error. It's impossible. Okay? So when you look at the ratios 1 to 2, it can be written as, well, with that word of 1 to 2. It can be written with 1 colon 2, which it also signifies 1 to 2. And then also 1/2 would also be the same comparison. Okay? So we're going to just we're going to compare a few ratios. And remember, ratios are going to be written in simplest form. So I want you to write these next few ratios in simplest form. So simplify the ratio for 1 and 2. All right? So when you look at these 2 problems, we know that 60 centimeters and 200 centimeters can be divided by a single number. And I think the easiest way to start this, because they're both they both have zeros in the end, I'm going to divide each one by 10. So then I go from 60 centimeters to 6 centimeters, 20 to 20 centimeters. But then I notice I can also simplify it even more. Each one of those can be divided by 2, which would equal 2 centimeters. Sorry, not 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters. 3 centimeters to 10 centimeters. And you may be thinking, well, why do we have this type of a ratio? And this could be a scale factor. So for let's say a picture, a small picture versus a large picture, the small picture, every 3 centimeters could equal 10 centimeters on the large picture. So you can have a scale factor there. Okay. Next one. Number 2, you see 2 years to 8 months. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simplify that fraction. And that's going to end up as 1 year over 4 months. Okay? Awesome. Let's move on. Okay, so now it says in the diagram AB to BC is 4 to 1. So the ratio of AB to BC is 4 to 1. We know the entire length of AC. What we're going to do is we're going to find AB and BC. All right? So I want you, if you think you know what's going on, give this one a shot and see if you can come up with the right answer. If not, just pause now so you can write it, and I'll explain. All right, so we know the ratio and we know the entire length of AC. So I'm right here, that's going to be 30. Okay, we also know that A is going to be 4 times what B is. Or sorry, AB is going to be 4 times what BC is. Okay, so we have 4 to 1, but we don't know what the actual measurements are. So it's going to be 4x, and this is going to be 1x, or x. Now we can put this into an equation, and we're going to come up with 4x plus x is equal to 30. Okay, now we're going to simplify to 5x is equal to 30. X at the end is going to be 6 because we divided by 5 there. All right, but we're not done because it asks us to find AB and BC here. So we plug this 6 in for x, and we're going to get, so this is going to become 6, and we're going to get 24 here, and plug in 6 here, it's going to be 6. Okay, so when you come up with this equation, you need to make sure you find out what AB is and what BC is. AB is 4x. We don't know. We know it's 4 times what BC is, but we're not quite sure what BC is. So we need to plug in a few variables. All right. Awesome. I want you to try this next one. It says the perimeter of a rectangle is 84 feet. Gives you the ratio. Find the length and the width of the rectangle. Pause now. Give this one a shot. All right. So when we know what the overall measurement is, and we know what the length and the width is, okay, or the length and the width ratio. Okay, so on my drawing here, I know the entire thing is going to be 84 feet. Well, how do you find the perimeter? Well, you add up all the sides. Okay, but if it gives us a ratio, we know that that ratio is going to be, one side is going to be 4x, and one side is going to be 3x. Okay, and the reason behind this is we know that 3x and 4x, that's our overall ratio. Okay, but don't forget, it's not just two sides that we know. We know every side. Okay, remember, we're finding the perimeter. All right, so now what we do is we add up all our sides. Okay, so we add up 4x plus 3x plus 4x plus 3x is equal to 84. Okay, so from here, we now have 14x is equal to 84. X is equal to 6. Okay, so now that we have x, are we done? No, we need to find the length and the width of each side. So you take this 6. Hey, look, 6 again. What's going on with this? Okay, so now we take this in our length, okay, which is our 4x, is going to be 4 times 6, which is 24, and our width, which is 3 times 6, is 18. So you use your ratio. We know the ratio is 4 to 3, but we are not quite sure what the overall width and length are. So you use that ratio 4 to 3, plug in your x's and your variables to help you come up with an equation and solve. Now the only way this works is if you know the overall measurement, and you know the formula. We know perimeter here gives us a perimeter, and it gives us a in the overall perimeter. Now if it was area, this would be a completely different problem. Okay, but it's not. So make sure you watch and read the directions carefully. All right, next one. Now we're going to get into proportions. So please write down these 4 bullet points, and I will explain them in just a second. All right, so when we look at proportions, as a definition is an equation stating that 2 ratios are equal. What do we need when we talk about an equation? What's the big thing? What's the big difference between an expression and an equation? There's an equal sign, right? Or there's some sort of inequality sign here. See, notice there's an equal sign there. So in a proportion, 2 ratios are congruent to each other. So if you look at a ratio of 2/3 and let's say 4/6, those two equal a proportion because those 2 ratios are equal to each other. So if you look at this proportion, the values A and D, those are going to be known as the extremes, all right? And B and C, notice they are opposite of one another. So A and D, so 2 and 6 in this proportion would be known as the extremes. And 3 and 4, which is my B and C, those are going to be known as my means. And when you look at a proportion as it's written of A to B is equal to C to D, the extremes are in the first and last position. Notice they are the red ones. Okay, those are my extremes, and B and C are my means. All right, those are in the middle two. Okay, so I want you to just know that vocabulary between extremes and means because they do have specific names to them. All right. I'm sure you have seen this before. This is the cross products property. I'm sure you've seen it in several different classes, but just write it down, a little refresher, so you remember. Again, cross products property, you multiply across. Okay, so A, you multiply your extremes, and you multiply your means together. Multiply both across. All right, so now using that cross products property, I want you to try each one and see how we do. The second one is a little tricky, okay? So I want you to see how you do on that first one. I'll show you that one, and then the second one, we'll get down to it. Give these two a shot. All right, so two properties, two proportions together. Remember, we are cross product to figure out that x, so you have 72 times 7, which is going to be 504, and we have 56 in x, and that just equals 56x. We're going to divide to get what x is, and x is simply 9. Okay, so when you look at that, cross and divide. Cross, multiply, and divide. All right, now the second one's going to be a little bit different. Okay, again, we do need to cross multiply here, but there's going to be a little additional step. So we know what 9 times 8 is. That's going to be 72. But when you look at 2y and 4y, that's going to be 8y squared. Okay, don't forget, you're not just taking 4 times 2, but you're also taking y times y. Y times y. So from here, okay, again, we go through the step of dividing by 8, and we get y squared is equal to 9. However, we are not done. Notice we have y squared. We need to get y. I want to get y all by itself. How do you undo a square? Well, you take the square root. Square root. And when you do that, okay, you are going to get y is equal to a positive and a negative 3. Remember, the square of 9 is both positive and negative. I could plug in negative 3 in for y, okay, and those would make it equal to each other. I could plug in 3 for y, and they would make it equal to each other. So you need both answers of a positive and a negative to get your answer. All right? Awesome job. We are done for the day. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on ratios and proportions. Have a great day.